Close your eyes. Let your shoulders fall. Let the weight of the day leave your hands, your fingertips, the small bones of your wrists. Whatever was urgent this morning is not urgent now. The emails, the notifications, the blinking screens, they are dimming, growing smaller, like city lights seen from an airplane climbing slowly into the dark. And you are climbing too, not upward, but inward, toward a quieter room. Imagine now that the air around you is changing. The dry hum of electricity fades. The sterile glow of fluorescent light softens into something warm, something amber, something alive. You smell it first, a faint sweetness, vegetal, earthy. It is rapeseed oil, burning slowly inside a small clay lamp. The flame is no larger than a grain of rice. It trembles, and the shadows on the walls tremble with it. You are standing at the entrance of a wooden workshop, Edo, Japan, sometime in the deep hours past midnight. The year does not matter. It is somewhere in the long, quiet centuries when this city breathed differently, when the fastest thing in the world was a horse at full gallop, when a single woodblock print could take weeks to finish. You step inside. The floor is cool beneath your bare feet, smooth, pale wood, zelkova, worn by decades of careful footsteps, each plank fitted so precisely that your toes find no seam between them. The air inside is different from the air outside. It is layered. There is the oil lamp, yes, but beneath it, the dry, papery scent of hinoki cypress shavings, curled in a small pile beside the workbench. And beneath that, something mineral, something cold and ancient. The smell of inkstone, solid ink, ground for hours against water. The room is small, no more than 8 tatami mats across. The ceiling is low, close, protective. Against the far wall, a wooden shelf holds dozens of ceramic jars, each one sealed with waxed paper and twine. Inside them, pigments. You do not know their names yet, but you can sense their colors even in this half-darkness. On the workbench, and this is where your eyes settle, there is a single block of wood, wild cherry, Yamazakura. It has been planned so flat that the lamplight slides across its surface like water across glass. Run your finger along it. Feel that. The grain is impossibly tight. Hundreds of summers compressed into lines so fine they feel like silk under your thumb. Somewhere in the corner of the room, a man is sitting. His back is to you. He is very still. You hear his breathing first, slow, measured. The breath of someone who has been awake for many hours and has forgotten the concept of hurry. In his right hand, he holds a chisel. The handle is bamboo, darkened by years of grip. The blade, a sliver of forged steel, catches the lamplight and throws a hair-thin line of gold across the ceiling. He does not move. He is looking at the woodblock, reading the grain, deciding where to enter. And then, a sound. So small you might miss it. The softest whisper of steel parting the surface of the wood. Shh. A curl of cherry rises from the block, paper thin, translucent. It catches the lamplight for a moment, glowing like a tiny amber feather, and then falls silently onto the bench. Shh. Another stroke. The carver's hand does not shake. His wrist is locked. Only his fingers move, adjusting pressure in increments so small they are measured not in distance but in feeling. This is the sound you will fall asleep to tonight. The ancient, rhythmic whisper of a chisel moving through wild cherry wood. Outside, beyond the paper screens, rain has begun to fall on Edo. You cannot see it, but you can hear it. A soft percussion on ceramic roof tiles, irregular, gentle, like fingertips tapping on the lid of a wooden box. The rain and the chisel find a rhythm together. Tsh, tap, tap, tsh, tap. And the oil lamp flickers, and the shadows sway, and the scent of cherry wood and rapeseed oil settles around you like a blanket drawn up to your chin. You are here now, in a workshop at the edge of sleep, in a city of 1 million souls, all of them dreaming. Stay. There is so much left to see. The carver sets down his chisel. He reaches for a small ceramic bowl filled with water. He dips a cloth into it, just the corner, and wipes the surface of the block. The water darkens the wood, and the faintest ghost of an image appears. Lines, curves, the beginning of something you almost recognize. But not yet. The image is still buried inside the wood, layer beneath layer, waiting to be freed. And you are sinking now, settling into the quiet, into the warmth of this small room. Let the sound of the chisel carry you. Shh. Shh. The night in Edo is very long, and it has only just begun. The rain has softened. It is no longer tapping on the roof tiles. It is resting against them. A quiet pressure, like a palm laid flat against a window. Inside the workshop, the oil lamp has burned lower. The flame has found its slowest rhythm, a pulse so faint it barely moves the shadows anymore. But there is another light now. At the far edge of the paper screen, a thin line of gray has begun to separate the sky from the rooftops. Not dawn, not yet. The rumor of dawn, the hour when the darkness becomes aware of its own ending. The carver has not slept. His back is still curved over the workbench. His left hand still rests on the surface of the woodblock, steadying it the way you might steady a sleeping child's head. He has been working for 5 hours, perhaps 6. He has not counted. Counting belongs to the daytime, to merchants, to calendars, not to this room. Look at the block beneath his hand. It is Yamazakura, mountain cherry, wild cherry. Not the ornamental cherry you may have seen in photographs, the pale, weeping kind planted in parks for their blossoms. This is something different. Yamazakura grows slowly, in poor soil, on the steep, shaded slopes of mountains in Izu and Hakone, where the winters are long and the summers never fully warm the roots. A tree that grows slowly grows tightly. The grain compresses, year after year, ring after ring, until the wood becomes so dense, so uniformly close, that a chisel moves through it the way a needle moves through wax. This is why the carvers chose it. Not pine. Pine is too soft. The blade wanders. Not oak. Oak is too hard. The blade fights. Cherry surrenders. But precisely. It gives the carver exactly what he asks for. No more. No less. The block on the bench was cut from the trunk over a year ago. It was sawn along the plank grain, with the rings not across them, because a woodblock must be carved on its broadest, smoothest face. After cutting, it was soaked, submerged in a wooden trough of cold river water for 3 days. Then it was dried, slowly, in shade, never in sun. Sun dries wood too quickly. It creates tension between the outer layers and the still damp core. The block would crack, split along invisible fault lines like a frozen pond giving way beneath a footstep. So they dried it in shade, for weeks, sometimes months, turning it, watching it, waiting for the moisture to leave evenly, gently, the way sleep leaves a body in the morning. Not all at once, but in slow, quiet layers. And then it was planned. A craftsman sat cross-legged on the workshop floor with a long-handled kana, a pulling plane, the blade set at a low angle, drawn toward the body instead of pushed away. Shh. Long, slow strokes, each one removing a shaving so thin you could read through it. Shh. The sound of the kana is different from the chisel. Wider, softer, like a long exhalation through barely parted lips. When the planing was finished, the surface of the block was not merely flat. It was true. If you placed a drop of water at one corner, it would sit there, perfectly still, not rolling, not spreading, just resting in the shallow well of its own surface tension. This is the block the carver is working on tonight. And what he is carving is the most important block in the entire process. The key block. In Japanese, it is called the hanshita, the underdrawing block, the master line, the skeleton upon which every color, every shade, every finished print will be built. Here is what happened before this night began. An artist, the designer, drew the image with a fine brush on a sheet of thin paper. Translucent paper, minagami. Every line of the composition was set down in black sumi ink. Every curve, every eyelash, every fold of fabric, every claw of foam on a wave's edge. And then this drawing was brought to the carver. He laid it face down on the surface of the cherry block. Face down. The image reversed, a mirror of itself. He pasted it there with thin rice glue, and with the tips of his fingers, the pads, not the nails, he rubbed the back of the paper until every fiber had married the wood. Then he waited for it to dry. And now, in this small room, in this gray hour before dawn, he is cutting. He is cutting away everything that is not a line. Think about that. He does not carve the lines themselves. He carves the space around them, the negative space, the silence between the notes. Each black line of the artist's drawing must be left standing as a thin ridge of wood rising from the block's surface. The ridges will hold the ink. The valleys will hold nothing. And when paper is pressed against the block, only the ridges will speak. The chisel he uses now is called a komasuki. It is a clearing chisel, wider than the one he used earlier. The blade is flat, angled slightly upward, and it scoops the waste wood in shallow, curving passes. Shkola, shkola, shkola. Small chips of cherry scatter across the bench, pale, almost white, like the petals of the tree they once belonged to. But for the finest lines, the hair-thin outlines of a face, the trembling edge of a kimono sleeve, he switches to a different blade. The two. A knife, not a chisel, held almost vertically. The point entering the wood at the very edge of the ink line and traveling along it the way a river follows the lowest contour of a valley. He does not push the two through the wood. He guides it. And beneath the blade, the cherry opens, cleanly, without splinter, without complaint. Shh. He makes 2 cuts for every line, one on each side, angled inward so that the base of the ridge is slightly wider than its top. A ridge with a wider base will not snap under pressure. It will hold, print after print, hundreds of impressions, thousands. This is not art alone. It is engineering. Tiny, silent engineering performed by candlelight, with a blade the width of a fingernail. The first birds are beginning to call. You hear them faintly through the paper walls. Not a song yet, just single notes, testing the air, asking if it is morning. The carver does not look up. His world is 8 inches wide and 12 inches long, the dimensions of the block. Nothing beyond its edges exists. He reaches for a small brass tool shaped like a flattened spoon, a scooping gouge, the aisuki. With this, he clears the larger open areas, the sky above a mountain, the empty water beneath a boat. removing wood in broad, shallow strokes until the surface is recessed, just enough that it will not touch the paper during printing. Shf, shf, shf. The sound is rounder now, softer, like a spoon stirring dry sand. He pauses. He lifts the block and holds it at an angle to the gray light now entering through the screen. The low, raking light catches every ridge, every valley, every tiny imperfection. He turns the block slowly, reading the shadows. Shadows tell him what his fingers cannot. Where a ridge is too thick, he sees a shadow too wide. Where a valley is too shallow, he sees a shadow too faint. He sets the block down, picks up the two again. One correction, a single pass, barely a breath of pressure. Shh. The shadow changes. The line is right. Outside, the sky has turned the color of washi paper. Not white, not gray. That particular warmth between the two that has no name in English. The rain has stopped entirely now. In its place, a silence so complete that you can hear the oil lamp consuming its last fuel. A faint crackle, a tiny sigh of smoke, and then the flame goes out. It does not matter. The morning is here. Pale blue-gray light fills the workshop like water filling a bowl. Slowly, from the edges inward. The carver sets down his blade. He places both hands flat on the bench. He breathes. The key block is not finished. It will take 2 more nights, perhaps 3. But the most difficult lines are cut. The face, the hands, the wave's edge. He covers the block with a square of soft cloth, cotton, unbleached, the color of old cream. And somewhere, in a drawer you have not yet noticed, there are other blocks, blank ones, waiting. One for each color that the finished print will need. One for the pale blue of a distant mountain. One for the deep indigo of the sea. One for the gray of a rain-filled sky. And one block waiting for a color that has only recently arrived in Edo. A blue so vivid, so startlingly deep, that the printmakers call it Baro-ai. The blue from Berlin. But that is a story for later. For now, the carver rises from his bench. His knees crack softly. His shadow stretches across the floor toward the light. He slides the screen open, just a few inches. And the morning air enters, cool, damp, carrying the green scent of moss on roof tiles and the faintest trace of wood smoke from a neighbor's kitchen. He stands there, breathing, letting the night leave his lungs. And you stand behind him, breathing too. The workshop is quiet. The tools are still. The cherry block sleeps beneath its cloth. And somewhere in that block, beneath the ridges and the valleys, an image is waiting. Patient, silent, knowing that it has waited inside the wood for 100 years and can wait a little longer. The carver is sleeping now. He has unrolled a thin futon in the corner of the workshop, behind the shelf of pigment jars, and his breathing has become the slowest sound in the room. Long inhalation, pause, long exhalation. Like a tide that has forgotten the moon and moves now only from habit. But you are still awake, and you are not alone. There is a boy sitting on the floor near the workbench. He is perhaps 15, perhaps younger. It is difficult to tell. His hands look older than his face. He is the apprentice. He has been with the carver for 3 years. He is not yet permitted to touch the key block, not yet permitted to hold the toe. His task this morning is simpler and older, and in its own way, just as essential. He is grinding pigments. Before him on the floor is a flat stone slab. It is about the size of an open book, dark gray, slightly concave in the center from years of circular grinding. The depression is shallow, no deeper than a coin, but it is smooth, impossibly smooth, worn by 10,000 hours of the same slow motion. In the boy's right hand, a smaller stone, a muller, rounded on the bottom, flat on the top where his palm presses down. And between the two stones, a small mound of powder. Pale, cream-colored, almost weightless. It is gofun, shell white. Made from oyster shells, not fresh shells, old ones. Shells that have been left outdoors for years, 5 years, sometimes 10. Exposed to rain and sun and frost until the organic matter inside, the proteins, the faint smell of the sea, has been completely erased. What remains is pure calcium carbonate, mineral, odorless, eternal. The shells are then crushed, soaked in water, settled. The finest particles collected from the surface like cream skimmed from milk. And now the boy is grinding this powder even finer. Listen. A low, circular sound. Mineral against mineral, stone speaking to stone in a language that predates all human speech. He adds a few drops of water from a ceramic cup. The sound changes immediately. Softer now, wetter. The powder becomes a paste, thick and smooth, like wet porcelain, like something that has never known a rough edge. The boy works in circles, always circles, clockwise. His shoulder moves, his elbow moves, his wrist stays locked. The motion comes from the center of his body, not from his hand. This is something the carver taught him on his very first day. Do not grind with your fingers, grind with your stomach. Let the weight pass through you into the stone. Sure, sure. He will do this for 1 hour. Then he will set the white paste aside in a shallow dish covered with damp cloth, and he will open the next jar. Reach out with me now, toward the shelf against the wall, the shelf of ceramic jars. In the morning light, you can see them clearly for the first time. There are perhaps 30, each one the size of a teacup, glazed in muted earth tones, ash gray, pale celadon, warm brown, each one sealed with a circle of waxed paper held in place by a loop of twisted hemp cord. And each one labeled, a single brushstroke of black ink on a strip of mulberry paper pasted to the side. The boy sets down the muller, wipes his hands on his apron, reaches for a jar in the second row. He unties the cord, lifts the waxed paper, and the color rises to meet you before your eyes adjust. Red. Not the red of fire, not the red of blood. A softer red. A red that remembers being pink. This is Beni, extracted from safflower petals, Carthamus tinctorius, a thistle-like plant that blooms yellow but hides its red deep inside the petal cells. To release it, the petals are soaked, washed, kneaded, fermented. The yellow bleeds out first. It is discarded. What remains, what stubbornly clings to the fibers of the flower, is this. This red that glows even in the bottom of a ceramic jar in a dim workshop on a Tuesday morning in Edo. The boy does not grind the beni. Not today. He replaces the paper, reties the cord. He moves to the next jar. This one is heavier. He steadies it with both hands. He opens it. Inside, the color is so dark it appears black at first, but tilt the jar toward the window light. There. Deep indigo. AI. The blue of the dyer's vat, made from the fermented leaves of the indigo plant, Persicaria tinctoria, which grows in the warm, rain-heavy provinces of Shikoku. The leaves are composted, heaped in mounds and turned every few days for 100 days, sprinkled with water, left to rot in a controlled, patient fermentation that transforms green leaf into blue powder. The smell of it, even through the jar, is sharp and vegetal, like crushed grass left in a jar of vinegar. It bites the back of your nose, not unpleasant, but insistent. This is the blue that has colored Japan for centuries, the blue of farmers' clothes, of Norin curtains hanging in shop doorways, of summer yukata. It is beautiful, it is everywhere, and it is not enough. Because indigo is difficult to print. It does not dissolve easily in water. It does not bind cleanly to the surface of a woodblock. It is a dyer's pigment, designed for cloth, not for paper. On a woodblock print, indigo can appear cloudy, uneven. It fades in sunlight. It lacks the clarity, the ringing depth that a printmaker dreams of. For 200 years, the printmakers of Edo worked within this limitation. They used indigo because it was all they had, and they compensated with skill, with patience, with compromise. And then one day, a new blue arrived. The boy reaches for a jar on the highest shelf. This jar is different from the others. It is smaller, sealed more carefully, the waxed paper doubled over, the cord wrapped 3 times instead of 2. It cost more than everything else on this shelf combined. He unties the cord slowly, lifts the paper, and the color inside is like nothing else in this room. Blue. But not the blue of indigo, not the blue of the sky, not the blue of the sea. A blue that seems to generate its own light. A blue so saturated, so structurally vivid, that it appears wet even when it is perfectly dry. Prussian blue. Barrow-eye. The blue from Berlin. The boy dips a dry bamboo spatula into the jar and lifts out a small amount. The powder sits on the spatula like dark sapphire dust, dense, heavy for its volume, almost metallic in its intensity. He tips it onto the grinding stone. And even before he adds water, even as a dry mound no larger than a thumbnail, the pigment commands the room. Everything else, the white, the red, the indigo, recedes. He begins to grind. The sound is different from the shell white, harder, more resistant. There is grit in it, a faint metallic edge. Because this pigment is not organic. It was not grown in soil or harvested from petals or composted from leaves. It was made in a laboratory by accident. Close your eyes with me now. Leave the workshop for a moment. Leave Edo, leave Japan. Travel west, across the sea, across the continent, across another sea. To a cold room in Berlin. The year is 1704. A color maker named Johann Jakob Diesbach is working at his bench. He's trying to make red. A specific red, Florentine lake, a pigment derived from cochineal insects, precipitated with an alkali solution, potash, and iron sulfate. He has done this many times before. The steps are routine. But today, he runs short of potash. He borrows a supply from a colleague, an alchemist named Johann Conrad Dippel, a strange, restless man who has been using the potash in his own experiments, distilling animal blood and bone into an oily substance he believes might be the elixir of life. Diesbach does not know this. He takes the borrowed potash, adds it to his mixture of cochineal and iron sulfate, and waits for red. Red does not come. Instead, the liquid in the flask turns pale, then purple, then, as if the color itself is making a decision, a deep and luminous blue unfolds from the center of the solution, like ink dropped into still water. Diesbach stares. The potash Dippel gave him was contaminated with blood-derived compounds, rich in nitrogen, rich in carbon. And when these compounds met the iron sulfate, they formed something that had never existed on Earth before. Iron ferrocyanide. a crystal lattice of iron and cyanide bonds so precisely arranged that it absorbs every wavelength of light except blue. It does not merely reflect blue, it insists upon it. Diesbach recognized immediately what he was holding. At the time, there were very few blue pigments available in Europe. Ultramarine, ground from lapis lazuli, was more expensive than gold. Smalt was dull and inconsistent. Indigo faded. And here, born from a mistake, born from borrowed potash and the residue of an alchemist's obsession, was a blue that was vivid, stable, reproducible, and inexpensive. They named it Preußisch Blau, Prussian Blue. Within a decade, it was being manufactured across Europe. Within 2 decades, it had reached China, carried by Dutch and British traders along the maritime routes of the East India companies. And from China, in the holds of junks crossing the East China Sea, it came to Nagasaki. The only port in Japan open to foreign trade during 2 centuries of deliberate isolation. From Nagasaki, it traveled by road to Osaka, from Osaka by coastal vessel to Edo. And from the merchant houses of Edo, one small jar at a time, it found its way into the hands of the printmakers. Open your eyes now. You're back in the workshop. The boy has added water to the Prussian blue powder on the grinding stone. The paste forming under the muller is extraordinary. It is darker than the dry powder, wetter, denser, almost black at the center where the pigment is thickest. But at the edges, where the paste thins against the gray stone, it glows. A fierce, singing blue. The blue of a winter sky 1 hour after sunset. The blue of deep ocean seen from a cliff. The boy pauses. He lifts the muller, examines the paste. He touches it with the tip of his smallest finger. It is cool, slightly granular still, not yet fine enough. He lowers the muller, resumes. This pigment, this accident of borrowed potash and blood-stained alchemy, will change everything. It will give the printmakers of Edo a blue they have never had, a blue that does not fade, a blue that binds perfectly to the surface of a cherry woodblock and transfers cleanly, brilliantly, to dampened washy paper. A blue that will color the sky above Hokusai's Fuji, the sea beneath his wave, the rain in Hiroshige's storms. A blue that traveled from a cluttered laboratory in Berlin to this quiet room in Edo and arrived, after a century of patient migration, exactly where it was needed. The boy finishes grinding. He transfers the paste to a small ceramic dish, covers it with damp cloth. His fingers are stained. He holds them up to the morning light and studies them. Blue fingertips, blue crescents beneath the nails, blue in the fine lines of his knuckles. He does not wash his hands. He reaches for the next jar. There are more colors waiting on the shelf. Sumi black, made from the soot of burned pine mixed with animal glue. It smells of campfire and patience. Odo, yellow ochre, earth pigment, dug from riverbanks and dried in the sun. It smells of nothing. It smells of time. Warasoku brown, warm, quiet, the color of tea poured into an unglazed cup. Each color ground on the same stone, each color stored in its own small dish, each one waiting for the day the blocks are finished and the printer arrives to begin his work. But that day is still far off. For now there is only the sound of stone against stone, and the carvers breathing from behind the shelf, and the morning light deepening from gray to gold. In the corner of the room, on the workbench, the key block rests beneath its cloth. The ridges inside are holding their shape. The lines are clean. The valleys are clear. And beside it, the blank blocks wait. One for each color, one for each pass through the press. One of them will carry the Prussian Blue, that small jar's worth of accident and history and ocean crossings. But first it must be carved. And before it can be carved, the artist must decide exactly where the blue will fall. Which part of the sky, which depth of the water, which shadow on which mountain. That decision belongs to a man you have not yet met. A man who is, at this very moment, sitting in another room in another part of Edo, holding a brush so fine it contains only 7 hairs. A man who has changed his name 30 times. A man who believes he will not paint anything truly alive until he is 110 years old. His name, for now, is Hokusai, and he is waiting for you in the next room. Leave the workshop now. Quietly. The boy is still grinding. The carver is still sleeping. Neither will notice you are gone. Step through the doorway into the narrow street outside. The morning air presses against your skin, cool and damp. It has the weight of a cloth soaked in cold water and wrung out only once. The street is unpaved, packed earth, darkened by last night's rain. Your feet leave shallow impressions that fill slowly with water behind you. Edo is waking. But this part of the city wakes slowly. This is not the fish market, not the river docks. This is a district of makers, of quiet trades. You pass a paper merchant's shop, still shuttered. Through the wooden slats, the faint, clean smell of fresh washi drifts toward you like breath from a sleeping mouth. You pass a lacquerware workshop. The door is open. Inside, trays of black lacquer are drying in dust-free stillness. The smell is sharp and resinous. It clings to the back of your throat for 3 steps and then releases you. Walk further. Turn left at the wooden water barrel on the corner. The street narrows. The buildings lean closer together. The eaves almost touch above you, and the sky becomes a thin blue ribbon stretched between the rooftops. You are looking for a particular door. You will know it not by any sign or marking. You will know it by the chaos visible through the cracks. There. A sliding door, slightly off its track. One panel open, one closed. The closed one patched with a rectangle of paper that does not match the rest. Through the opening, you see disorder. Not the careful order of the carver's workshop, not the labeled jars and swept floors and tools in rows. This room is a storm that has agreed to stay indoors. Papers everywhere, sketches pinned to the walls, sketches piled on the floor, sketches curling on a low table beside cups of cold tea and dishes of dried ink and a sweet potato with one bite taken from it, abandoned days ago. Brushes, dozens of them, scattered like fallen chopsticks across every surface, some clean, most not. Inkstones with ink still wet in them, inkstones with ink dried to a black crust, inkstones stacked on top of each other because there is no room anywhere else. And in the center of this chaos, cross-legged on a thin cushion that has been mended so many times it is more thread than fabric, sits an old man. He is small, smaller than you expected. His shoulders are narrow. His head is large in proportion to his body. His hair is gray and uncombed and tied loosely at the back of his neck with a strip of indigo cloth. He is 70 years old, or perhaps 71. He has lost track. Age, like counting, is a concern for other people. His name. What is his name today? He's had so many. He was born Tokutaro. He became Shunro when he entered his first master studio at 18, then Sori, then Kako, then Taito, then Itsu, then Manji. 30 names in 70 years, each one shed like the skin of a cicada. Each one left behind when the work it represented no longer felt true. The name he uses now, the name the world will remember, is Katsushika Hokusai. Hokusai, which means roughly North Studio, a direction, a room, nothing personal, as if the man himself is merely the place where the work occurs. He does not look up as you enter. He is staring at a sheet of paper on the low table before him. The paper is large, the width of his outstretched arms, and on it, drawn in black ink, is an image you have seen before. Even if you do not know its name, you know this image. It lives somewhere in the deep library of pictures the modern world has placed inside your mind. A wave. An enormous, curling wave rising from the left side of the composition, its crest exploding into fingers of white foam that reach forward like claws. And beneath the wave, 3 long boats, slim as needles, their crews flattened against the hulls, tiny, fragile, mortal. And behind the wave, behind everything, in the distant center of the image, a mountain. Small, still, perfectly symmetrical. Fuji. The image is called Kanagawa Oki Nami-ura, under the wave off Kanagawa. The world will call it simply the Great Wave. And the old man is not satisfied with it. He has drawn this wave before, many times. The first attempt was 30 years ago. He was 40. The wave was stiff, illustrative. It looked like a picture of water rather than water itself. The second attempt, a decade later. Better. The curve was more alive. But the foam was wrong, too decorative, too polite. And now, this, the version that has taken 3 decades of seeing to arrive at. He leans closer to the paper. His face is inches from the ink. Look where he is looking. Not at the wave as a whole, not at the boats, not at the mountain. He is looking at the crest, at the place where the wave's upper edge curls forward and begins to break apart into fingers of spray. Look closer. Each finger of foam is not simply a splash, it is a smaller wave. And at the tip of each smaller wave, smaller still, tiny curls, hooks, each one a miniature echo of the great wave itself. Waves within waves within waves. This is what Hokusai has seen. Not through mathematics. He does not know the word fractal. That word will not exist for another 250 years, when a mathematician named Benoit Mandelbrot will give a name to something that nature has been doing all along. But Hokusai has watched the sea. He has sat on the beaches of Kanagawa and Choshi and Enoshima for decades, watching, only watching. And he has seen what the sea does. It repeats itself. Not identically, not mechanically, but an echo. The shape of a wave is the shape of the ripple on its surface, and the shape of the ripple is the shape of the droplet at its crest. The large contains the small remembers the large. The pattern persists across every scale of observation. This is fractal geometry. And Hokusai has drawn it with a brush. Now look at the curve of the wave's body. Follow it with me. Begin at the base where the water rises from the bottom of the image. It climbs, steeply at first. The line is almost vertical. The water gathering force, gathering height. Then it begins to lean. The line curves forward, slowly, then faster, the radius tightening, the water folding over itself the way a fern frond curls inward as it unfurls from its stem. This curve has a name. It is a logarithmic spiral. The same curve you find in the shell of a nautilus, in the arms of a hurricane seen from above, and the arrangement of seeds in the face of a sunflower. It is a curve that grows wider at a constant rate relative to its own rotation. Every quarter turn, the radius increases by the same proportion. It never closes. It never collapses. It simply expands outward in perfect, self-similar elegance. Hokusai did not plot this curve with a compass. He did not calculate the ratio. He found it the way all great artists find mathematics. By looking so carefully at the real thing that the underlying structure revealed itself. The eye discovered what the equation describes. There is a quieter geometry too. Look at the whole composition. The wave fills the left 2/3 of the image, violent, enormous, close. Fuji occupies a small triangle in the exact center, still, distant, calm. The wave is chaos, the mountain is order, and between them, the hollow through which you see the mountain, framed by the claw of the wave, is a passage. A window of stillness inside the violence. This negative space, this emptiness, is the true subject of the print. Not the wave, not the mountain, the space between them. The Japanese have a word for this, ma. The interval, the pause, the meaningful void. Hokusai lifts his brush. It is the finest brush he owns, 7 hairs, taken from the tail of a weasel in winter, when the fur is densest and each hair tapers to a point so fine it is invisible until it touches ink. He dips it, not into a pool of ink, into the barest film. The brush barely darkens. It holds perhaps a single breath's worth of liquid. And he touches the paper, at the tip of the wave's highest claw. He adds a curl, so small you would need to press your face against the paper to see it. A tiny hook of foam, a wave within a wave within a wave. His hand does not tremble. This steadiness is not the steadiness of youth. Youth is steady because it does not know what can go wrong. This steadiness is the steadiness of 70 years, of a hand that has trembled and learned to stop. He sets the brush down. He sits back. He looks at the wave the way the carver looked at the woodblock, reading it, searching for what is not yet right. There is a passage he will write near the end of his life. He will say that from the age of 6 he had a mania for drawing, that by 50 he had produced a vast number of works, but that nothing he made before the age of 70 was of any value. At 73, he will say, he began to understand the true structure of animals, plants, trees, birds, fishes, and insects. By 80, he hopes to have made still more progress. By 90, he will penetrate the mystery of things. At 100, he will reach something marvelous. And at 110, every dot, every line will be alive. He will not live to 110. He will die at 89. And his last words, whispered from a futon not unlike the one the carver is sleeping on right now, will be, "If heaven gives me just 10 more years." A pause. Or even 5. Then I could become a true painter. But that is far away. Today he is 70 and the wave is almost finished. He rolls the drawing carefully, ties it with a strip of cotton. This drawing will be carried across the city to the carver's workshop. It will be pasted face down onto a block of Yamazakura. The carver will cut around every line, every claw of foam, every fractal curl. And the paper itself, this paper with Hokusai's ink on it, will be destroyed in the process. Rubbed away, scraped away, until only ghost traces remain, embedded in the wood. The original drawing ceases to exist so that the print can be born. Hokusai knows this. He does not mind. He has never been interested in keeping things. 30 names abandoned, 93 changes of address in a single lifetime. rooms left in disarray, studios walked away from. He moves through the world the way the brush moves through ink, touching, leaving a mark, lifting away. The room is quiet now. Hokusai reaches for the sweet potato, looks at it, sets it down again. He picks up another brush, dips it in water, cleans it slowly against the rim of a chipped ceramic bowl. The water in the bowl turns gray, then faintly blue, Prussian blue, from a brush he used yesterday or the day before. The blue swirls in the water, slowly, a tiny private turbulence that no one else will ever see. And outside, the morning in Edo continues without urgency. A vendor passes in the street below, calling out in a low, melodic voice, selling tofu. The sound rises and fades like smoke from a single stick of incense. A crow calls once from a temple roof. And somewhere, a few streets away, in a clean and ordered workshop, a carver is waking from sleep. He is rising from his futon, folding it, placing it in the corner. He is walking to the workbench, removing the cloth from the key block, running his finger along the ridge of a line he cut last night. It is clean, it is sharp, it is ready. And soon, very soon, a new drawing will arrive at his door. Rolled in cotton, carried by a boy with blue-stained fingers. A drawing of a wave that contains every wave inside it. But before the carving begins, before the ink is mixed and the blocks are stacked and the printer takes his place at the press, there is one more craft to understand. The most physical, the most rhythmic, the most like breathing. The act of printing itself. The damp paper, the inked block, the Baren pad pressed in slow, firm circles against the back of the sheet. That is where we go next. But not yet. For now, stay here. In the quiet between the artist's studio and the carver's bench. In the space between the drawing and the cut. In the M.A. The interval. The meaningful pause. Three weeks have passed. You would not know it inside this room. The light is the same. The smell is the same. The quiet is the same. But the workbench has changed. The key block is finished. It sits at the far end of the bench, no longer covered by cloth. Its surface is a landscape now. Ridges and valleys. Lines rising from the wood like veins on the back of an old hand. Beside it, arranged in a careful row, are the color blocks. 7 of them. Each one carved from the same Yamazakura. Each one carrying only the areas that will receive a single color. The blue block, the pale blue block, the gray block, the yellow block, the brown block, the black reinforcement block, and one more for the faintest blush of pink on the horizon line that most people will never consciously notice. But there is someone new in the workshop today. He arrived at dawn. He brought his own tools wrapped in a roll of indigo cloth. He brought his own apron. He brought his own silence. The printer. The Surishi. He is younger than the carver, perhaps 45, but his forearms are disproportionately strong. The muscles are visible even through the fabric of his sleeves, which he has tied back with cotton cords above the elbow. His hands are clean, conspicuously clean. He washed them 3 times before sitting down, once with cold water, once with warm, once with water in which rice bran had been soaking overnight. Clean hands do not leave oils on the woodblock. Clean hands do not contaminate the pigment. Clean hands ensure that the only thing transferred to the paper is what is meant to be there. Before him on the bench, the tools of his trade. a wide, flat brush made from horsehair. The bristles are black and coarse and cut in a perfect straight line across the bottom. This is for applying color to the surface of the block. A smaller brush, softer, for blending, for the gradients the Japanese call bokashi, the slow fade from dark to light that gives a printed sky the illusion of depth. A ceramic dish of water, a bamboo spatula, a stack of dampened paper, and the Baren. Pick it up. It is surprisingly light. A flat disc, roughly the size of your palm. The back is covered in a tightly coiled cord made from bamboo sheath, twisted, braided, wound in a spiral that begins at the center and expands outward. The front is smooth, wrapped in a single bamboo leaf, glossy, taut, the color of dark honey. This bamboo leaf will be replaced every few hundred impressions. It wears thin, loses its friction, begins to slide instead of grip. A good printer can feel the difference in a single stroke. The printer sets the Baren down, reaches for the stack of paper. Washi. Handmade paper, each sheet produced in the mountain villages of Ekizen province, where the rivers run cold and clean, and the kozo mulberry grows thick on the hillsides. Kozo bark is stripped, soaked, boiled in lye until the fibers separate, rinsed in running water for hours, then beaten, gently, with wooden mallets on a stone slab. The pulp is mixed with water and a plant-based mucilage called neri, extracted from the roots of the Tororo aoi plant. The neri slows the drainage. It gives the papermaker time to rock the screen back and forth, layering fibers and crossing directions, building strength the way a boat builder lays planks at alternating angles. The result is paper of extraordinary quality. Thin but strong, absorbent but precise. It accepts pigment without bleeding. It endures pressure without tearing. And when dampened, as the printer has dampened these sheets since before dawn, stacking them between layers of moist cloth, the fibers soften and open like pores on warm skin, ready to receive. The printer selects the first block. Not the key block. The key block, the black outline, will be printed last. He begins with the palest color, the faintest tone, the blush of pink along the horizon. This is the rule. Light to dark, background to foreground, whisper to voice. He places the block flat on the bench before him, face up. He dips the horsehair brush into a shallow dish where a small amount of rose-tinted pigment has been mixed with rice paste. The rice paste acts as a binder. It gives the pigment body. It helps it cling to the raised surface of the block without pooling in the valleys. He loads the brush. Not too much, not too little. He has done this 10,000 times. His wrist knows the weight. And now he paints the block. Long, even strokes, left to right, the bristles hissing softly against the cherry wood. The color spreads, a thin, even film covering only the raised areas. The valleys remain clean, untouched. Now the paper. He lifts a single sheet from the dampened stack. It hangs from his fingers with a slight droop, limp, heavy with moisture. It has the weight of a silk handkerchief dipped in water. On the corner of the woodblock, there are two small marks cut into the surface. An L-shaped notch on the bottom right, a straight notch on the bottom edge. These are the kento, the registration marks. Every color block in the set has its kento in exactly the same position. When the printer places the paper, its corner tucked precisely into the L-shaped notch, its bottom edge aligned with the straight one, every subsequent color will land in exactly the right place. A misalignment of even 1 millimeter would blur the image. The colors would drift outside the black outlines like a dream losing its edges. He lowers the paper, corner to the kento, edge to the line. The sheet settles onto the inked surface of the block with the faintest sound. A whisper, like a page turning in an empty room. And now the Baren. He picks it up with his right hand. His left hand rests flat on the paper, steadying it. He places the Baren on the back of the sheet and presses. The motion is circular, slow, firm, beginning at the center of the image and spiraling outward. The same logarithmic spiral that Hokusai drew in the curl of the wave. The friction between the bamboo leaf and the back of the washi produces a sound that is almost organic. A breath, a sustained exhalation. The pressure transfers the pigment from the raised surface of the wood through the dampened fibers of the paper. Not onto the surface, into it. The color does not sit on top. It sinks, becomes part of the paper itself. This is why woodblock prints have that quality you cannot find in any other medium. The color seems to glow from within, as if the paper itself is luminous. He lifts the Baren. He peels the paper slowly from the block. A soft, wet sound, like lips parting. And there, on the white sheet, the faintest blush of pink. A horizon. A sky just before sunrise. Almost nothing. And yet this almost nothing will be visible in the final print. A warmth beneath the blue. A memory of light that the viewer will feel without knowing why. The sheet is set aside, placed on a drying board, and another is taken from the stack. Corner to the kento, edge to the line, Baren in circles. Again, and again, and again. He will print the entire edition in this first color before moving to the next block. 200 sheets, sometimes 300, each one placed by hand, each one pressed by hand, each one peeled and set to dry. Then the pale blue block. 300 sheets again, then the darker blue, the gray, the yellow, the brown, and finally, the key block, the black outline that will bind every color together. 7 passes, 300 sheets, more than 2,000 individual impressions for a single edition of a single print. No one person made this image. This is the thing the modern world often forgets. Hokusai designed it. His brush created the drawing. His eye found the fractal in the foam. But Hokusai never carved a block, never inked a surface, never pressed a Baren against a sheet of washi. The carver did that. The printer did that. 3 masters, 3 separate disciplines, each one essential, each one invisible in the finished print. And behind all 3 there was a 4th figure, the one who decided that this image should exist at all. The publisher. In Edo, a woodblock print was not a private act of creation. It was a commercial product. Conceived, financed, and distributed by a publishing house. A business with its own reputation, its own clientele, its own acute sense of what the people of Edo wanted to see. The most famous of these publishers was a man named Tsutaya Juzaburo. He operated from a shop in the Toriabura district, near the entrance to the Yoshiwara Pleasure Quarter, a location chosen with commercial precision. Tsutaya understood that ukiyo-e was not fine art in the way the West would later define it. It was popular culture. The prints were posters, advertisements, playbills for kabuki actors, portraits of famous courtesans, travel guides, fashion plates, news. They were sold for roughly the price of a bowl of noodles. A single print cost about 20 mono. A double serving of soba at a street stall cost 16. This was art for everyone. Tsutaya was not merely a shopkeeper. He was an impresario, a curator of taste, a man who could look at a young artist and see 30 years into the future. He discovered Utamaro, the master of Bijinga, portraits of beautiful women drawn with such intimacy that you can almost hear their silk rustling. He published Shiraku, the mysterious actor portrait artist who appeared, produced 140 prints in 10 months, and vanished completely. No one knows who Shiraku really was. It remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of art history. Tsutaya knew, and Tsutaya is dead. The publishing system worked like this. The publisher conceived a series, 36 views of Mount Fuji, 100 famous views of Edo, 53 stations of the Tokaido. He commissioned the artist, paid in advance, reviewed the sketches, sometimes requested changes. He hired the carver, hired the printer, supplied the materials, the wood, the paper, the pigments, including, by the 1830s, the expensive imported Prussian Blue. He submitted the finished design to the government censors. Yes, censors. Every print published in Edo required a seal of approval from the city's censorship office, the Kiwame seal. A small stamped mark on the finished print confirming that its content did not violate the Tokugawa shogunate's ever-shifting rules about public expression. Political commentary was forbidden. Satire of the ruling class was punishable by exile or worse. Tsutaya himself was fined heavily in 1791 for publishing satirical works by the writer Santo Kyoden. Half his assets were confiscated. He continued publishing. Once the censor's seal was obtained, the publisher oversaw production. He set the print run, managed the inventory, distributed copies to his own shop and to a network of booksellers and print dealers throughout Edo and sometimes beyond, to Osaka, Kyoto, Nagoya. He placed his mark on every print, a small cartouche, his shop name, his brand. And if a print sold well, he ordered more impressions. The blocks were durable. A single set of cherry blocks could produce 10,000 prints before the lines began to soften and the ridges lost their sharpness. This is why the Great Wave exists not as one object, but as thousands. There is no single original, no sacred, unique artifact. There are copies in the Metropolitan Museum in New York, in the British Museum in London, in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, in the Tokyo National Museum. Each one pressed by the same Baren on the same blocks from the same cherry trees. Each one an original, each one identical and yet subtly different. Because the pressure varied, because the dampness of the paper changed with the weather, because a human hand can never repeat itself with the perfection of a machine. And they were never meant to hang in museums. They were meant to be pinned to a wall in a merchant's house, passed between friends, collected in albums, carried as souvenirs from a pilgrimage. They were meant to be touched, held, folded, occasionally damaged, eventually discarded and replaced by the next series. Disposable beauty. This troubled no one in Edo. Return now to the printer. He is on the fourth color, the darker blue. The Prussian Blue. He has mixed the pigment with rice paste to a consistency he checks by lifting the brush and watching the color drip from the bristles. 1 drop, 2. The third drop hesitates, stretches, and falls. The consistency is right. He paints the block. But this time, he does something different. He loads the brush heavily on the left side of the block, the side of the wave, and lightly on the right, the side of the sky. Then, with the smaller, softer brush, he blends the boundary. feathering the edge where dark blue becomes pale blue becomes almost nothing. This is bokashi. The gradient, the fade, the breath between colors. It cannot be carved. It exists only in the printer's hand, in the way he loads the brush, in the speed of his blending stroke, in the dampness of the paper at the moment of contact. Bokashi is the printer's signature, invisible, uncredited, essential. He lays the paper. Corner to the kento, edge to the line. He picks up the Baren. The pressure is firmer now. The Prussian Blue is denser than the paler pigments. It requires more force to drive it into the fibers of the washi. His shoulder engages. His body leans forward. The weight transfers through his arm, through his wrist, through the Baren, into the paper, into the wood. He peels the sheet. And the wave appears. Not the outline, not the foam, just the body of the water. A deep, saturated field of Prussian blue that fades at its upper edge into the pale tone already printed beneath. The two blues merge. They were always meant to merge. Layer on layer, pass after pass. The image assembling itself the way a memory assembles, not all at once, but in fragments that gradually become whole. The afternoon light has shifted. The printer does not notice. His world, like the carver's, has contracted to the dimensions of the block. Corner to the kento, edge to the line, Baren in circles. Outside, the light is turning amber. The tofu vendor has finished his rounds. The streets are quieter now. The boy with blue-stained fingers is sweeping the floor around the pigment shelf. The broom makes a soft, rhythmic shush against the Zelkova planks. And the Baren answers. 2 rhythms, 2 breaths, finding each other across the room. The day is ending. But the printing will continue tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, until every sheet has received every color, until the key block, the black skeleton, the master line, is pressed for the final pass. And the image is complete. A wave, a mountain, 3 boats, and between them, a space. A silence made visible. Printed 2,000 times by a man whose name you will never know. Evening now. The workshop is behind you. You are outside, walking. The streets of Edo have turned the color of wet stone. Gray, darkening. The sky is low. Not threatening, just heavy. A sky that has been holding its breath all afternoon and is now slowly letting go. Rain. Not the gentle rain of the first night. This rain is sudden, vertical, dense. It arrives all at once like a curtain dropped from the clouds. You are standing on the approach to Shin-Ohashi, the great bridge. It spans the Sumida River in long, dark wooden beams. The planks are slick. The railings shine. People are running, figures in straw cloaks bent against the downpour. A woman clutching a paper umbrella that the wind is trying to invert. A man with a bundle on his back, head down, moving quickly toward the far bank. And somewhere behind you, standing very still while everyone else runs, is a man who is not looking at the bridge. He is looking at the rain. Utagawa Hiroshige. He is 58 years old, quiet by nature, a man who prefers observation to conversation. Where Hokusai was chaos, Hiroshige is stillness. Where Hokusai fought the world into submission with his brush, Hiroshige simply waited for the world to reveal itself. And what the world revealed to him was weather. Mist on a river at dawn, snow falling on a temple gate, moonlight on rice paddies, and rain. Always rain. He understood something that no printmaker before him had attempted. Rain is not a thing. It is a condition. It changes everything it touches: the color of the sky, the posture of the body, the mood of a street. And it is, in its essence, a set of lines. Diagonal lines, carved into a separate block, a block dedicated to nothing but rain. Hundreds of fine, parallel grooves scored into the cherry wood at a steep angle. When inked in gray and printed over the finished image, over the bridge, the river, the figures, the sky, the lines fell across everything, unifying, obscuring, softening. The rain did not belong to any single layer of the image. It belonged to all of them. It was the atmosphere itself. Stand on the bridge with me. Feel the rain on the back of your neck, on your shoulders, on your closed eyelids. Each drop a small, cold point of contact between the sky and your skin. The river below is alive. Thousands of tiny circles appearing and vanishing on its surface. Each circle perfect, each circle gone before you can trace its edge. Hiroshige saw this, and he understood that he could not print the circles, but he could print their feeling. By darkening the water beneath the rain, by letting the gray of the sky bleed downward into the gray of the river using bokashi, that same gradient, that same breath between tones, until sky and water became one. No horizon line, just a slow dissolve. The world erasing its own edges. This print, Sudden Shower over Shinohashi Bridge, would become one of his most celebrated works. Part of a vast series called 100 Famous Views of Edo. 118 prints, in truth, published over 2 years. A portrait of a city seen in every season, every hour, every weather. Cherry blossoms at Ueno, fireworks at Ryogoku, snow at Kanda Myojin Shrine, moonrise over the Tamagawa, and rain. Rain over and over. Because rain was the thing that made Edo most itself. The city was built on water, canals and rivers threaded through it like veins through a leaf. And the rain returned everything to water. The light is almost gone now. The rain has softened, not stopped, just quieted. The heavy vertical lines have become something finer, a mist, hanging in the air between the lanterns that are beginning to glow along the far bank of the river. Orange light, diffused, each lantern a soft circle of warmth bleeding into the gray. Hiroshige is gone. He slipped away while you were watching the river. He does that, arrives quietly, observes, leaves. But the rain remains, and the bridge remains, and you remain. Standing in the mist, on the wet planks, listening to the river moving slowly beneath you. The sound of water against the wooden pilings. Steady, soft, constant. Stay here for a moment longer. The night is coming, and there is one more room to visit. One more story. The last. Two centuries pass. Let them pass. They pass the way clouds cross a mountain, slowly, without effort, without sound. The workshops close. The workshops open again. New hands hold the chisels. New eyes read the grain. The blocks wear down. New blocks are cut. Hokusai dies. Hiroshige dies. The prints accumulate, thousands upon thousands, stacked in shops, folded in drawers, pinned to walls and taken down again when the seasons change. And then, in 1853, the ships arrive. American warships, black hulls, steam and iron. After 200 years of chosen isolation, Japan is opened. Trade begins. And the prints begin to travel. Not carefully, not reverently. They are used as packing material. Crumpled between ceramic bowls, wrapped around porcelain figurines, stuffed into crates bound for Le Havre, for London, for Amsterdam. Cheap paper, disposable beauty. The people who packed them thought nothing of it. But in Paris, someone unfolds one, smooths it flat on a table, and stares. The color, the flatness, the absence of shadow. No perspective as Europe understood it, no vanishing point, no mottled light falling from a single source. Instead, a world seen from above and from within simultaneously. Bold outlines, pure, unblended fields of color, compositions cut by the edge of the frame as if the image continued beyond seeing. Nothing in European painting looked like this. The prints spread through the studios of Paris like a quiet fire. Monet collected them, hung them in his dining room at Giverny, dozens of them, lining the yellow walls like windows into another way of seeing. Degas studied their radical compositions, the way a figure could be cropped at the edge, the way empty space could hold as much weight as a body. Whistler absorbed their restraint, their willingness to let a single color dominate an entire image. His gray nocturnes, fog on the Thames, are Hiroshige's rain translated into oil. And Van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh did not merely study the Japanese prints. He copied them, brushstroke by brushstroke, in oil paint, on canvas. He took Hiroshige's sudden shower over Shinohashi Bridge, the very print you stood inside only minutes ago, and reproduced it in thick, urgent pigment. The diagonal rain, the dark bridge, the running figures. He added a border of Japanese characters copied from other prints. He could not read them. He did not care. He wanted to live inside that world. He wrote to his brother Theo, "I envy the Japanese artists for the incredible clarity of everything in their work. Their work is as simple as breathing," he said. "They draw a figure in a few sure strokes as easily as buttoning a vest." He never went to Japan. He went to Arles instead, searching for bright color, for flat light, for what he called his own Japan. The prince from Edo had crossed the world, had arrived crumpled in a shipping crate, and had changed the direction of Western art. The floating world had floated all the way to France. And the men who made the prints, the carver, the printer, the boy with blue fingers, never knew. They were already gone, already dust, already part of the wood and the paper and the rain. Come back now. Come back across the ocean, across the century. Come back to the workshop. It is night again. The same night, the first night, as if you never left. The oil lamp is burning its final drop of fuel. The flame is no longer a flame. It is a memory of one, a small blue point hovering above the clay rim. The carver is at his bench. His tools are put away. The chisel, the toe, the gouge, each one wiped clean, each one returned to its place. The block is finished. It rests on the bench uncovered now. The lines are all cut. The valleys are clear. The ridges hold their shape in the almost dark. The cloth that covered it is folded, set aside. The pigment jars are sealed. The grinding stone is washed. The boy has gone home. The rain has stopped. And the silence that fills the room is not empty. It is full. Full of the work that was done here. Full of the hours. The careful hours. The carver places his palm flat against the surface of the finished block. He feels the ridges against his skin, the lines that will become the wave. He does not know that this image will cross the world. He does not know that a man in Arles will try to live inside it. He knows only that the wood is true, the lines are clean, the work is done. He lifts his hand, the lamp goes out. Darkness, total, warm. and in the darkness, the faintest scent. Cherry wood, rapeseed smoke, and rain on the roof tiles, already drying, already gone. You are lying down now. You have been lying down this whole time. The workshop is quiet. The city is quiet. The century is quiet. Sleep now. The wave will wait. It has always been waiting. Inside the wood. This has been Kaito. Thank you for drifting through the floating world with me tonight. Sleep well. Good night.